Hello and welcome back to another screencast video with Mr. Kogut. We're going to be focusing on nucleic acids as we continue into our Unit 3 on macromolecules. So as always, we're going to look at our goals first. We're going to start by hoping to understand what nucleic acids are composed of, why they're important, and of course the role that this macromolecule plays in the cell. A little bit different though today. We should be familiar with this, but we might not realize it. So my question to everybody today is, based on the following information, what do you think it could be? So nucleic acids are used to store information for the cell and instructions for the cell. Think about what we've learned already up to this point about macromolecules, and then think about what we know about organelles. And please tell me, pause the video in a second, tell me, what do you think this is found in the cell? And why is that? What is that we're so familiar with? Pause the video now and say it out loud. Right, so it should be found in the nucleus. Nucleic acid is what makes up DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And we'll talk about that name in a few minutes, but DNA is a kind of nucleic acid, and that plays a huge role in our cell. We know that from our last unit that DNA are the instructions to the cell and how it accomplishes everything. It's the brain of the cell. So DNA is going to be something that's super, super important, but we're also kind of familiar with it to some degree. So part of what we're going to be looking at today is DNA as well. So let's get right into the structure of DNA, of nucleic acid rather. Nucleic acid is made up of 4 main elements, and then there's a 5th one we'll look at as well. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, which we know has been typical, nitrogen as well in this situation, and phosphorus also plays a role in that. We're going to come back to that in a minute because nucleic acids themselves aren't actually made out of phosphorus, but phosphorus plays a huge role in DNA, and therefore we sort of kind of lump that in the nucleic acids because one of the main nucleic acids that we're looking at is DNA. But that answers our first question of what nucleic is composed of. We're going to look at the structure of nucleic acid as well. So nucleic acids, these are the 5 different kinds of nucleic acids that we're going to be focusing on. And they're different because of a couple things. So they're different depends on the amount of each element that we see in them that makes up the molecule, and also the order and the way it's organized. So we can see just by looking at these carefully, we see there's a ring here and a ring here in this one, which is guanine, and this one in adenine. So they have 2 rings versus these ones, cytosine, uracil, and thymine, which only have 1 ring. So we can already see that the structure is different significantly in the shape, and it also obviously therefore have different amounts of each one. But either way, these are our subunits this term. So we, in this unit, the subunits that we're looking at here, we see are going to be these 5 ones, nucleic acids, but those build together to form our DNA. And we know this picture is probably somewhat familiar. This is a double helix, and we'll talk about that in a second, but this is DNA. And each of these bars here represents one of the nucleic acids. And depending on the way those are organized, those gives us different pieces of information. And it's almost like a computer uses zeros and ones to communicate information and save information. We have 4 different ones, cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine in DNA, or cytosine, guanine, adenine, and uracil in RNA. And I'll come back to RNA in a second and what that represents. What we see here ultimately is that the macromolecule DNA or the macromolecule RNA is composed of nucleic acids, which are the subunits that make it up. Just a quick word on what RNA is, because you might not be as familiar with that. DNA is sort of like the information, the blueprints that you would find at a library of very, very old information that we want to keep really safe. RNA, on the other hand, is the instructions that we're going to use to actually build things. So when we're making proteins, for example, and DNA gives us the instructions for that. We don't take the DNA out of the nucleus and put that into the cytoplasm to be able to build it. We make copies of that in RNA, and we send that outside into the nucleus to be able to build our proteins. And if you guys remember from our last unit, it's the ribosomes that are going to be building that. So the ribosomes attach to the RNA, and they read the different nucleic acids that they have and the order that they're in order to be able to get that information. So that gives us a basic understanding and a little bit more detail, though, of how this stores information and how that information is then used in the cell. Now, just to give you another example of how this is, and what the shape of DNA looks like and what the molecules look like, we can see here the green and pink represent the nucleic acids, and then the blue and the red here represent sort of the sides, which we see as this black in this picture and the black in this picture, which is actually separate molecules, not made of nucleic acid, but play an important part in the DNA. That backbone is made up of a sugar, either deoxyribose or ribose, which is a sugar, along with a phosphate group, which is made up of phosphorus and oxygen. And that connects and forms that side chain, that backbone to the DNA. Now, you'll also notice over here that certain nucleic acids attach together. You're always going to find A and T, or adenine and thymine, attaching together. So the adenine and the thymine, so the two chains with the one chain. Or you're going to find the guanine and the cytosine attaching together. And again, we see that that's the two chains with the one chain. If we were looking at RNA, we would substitute the thymine for the uracil, and it wouldn't be double that we would see here. It'd be a single one. Just be one nucleic acid involved. But that not only helps us to understand a little bit more about the connections that we see and what we're seeing even in this picture. We always see the red and the yellow connected, not necessarily in the same order with red on the left and yellow on the right, but it could be reversed. And we see again the green and the blue are also attaching together. That also understands what we said earlier on, where there's that asterisk next to the phosphorus, because phosphorus doesn't make up the nucleic acid, but it makes up that backbone. All right, so let's just talk a little bit more about DNA's shape. So DNA is sort of this twisting shape that we see here, and that's called a double helix. Double helix because there's two of them, as opposed to what we saw in RNA where there was just one. But one of the ways we can almost picture it is if we think of a rope ladder, and you've got this ropes on either side with like bars across that are connecting those two ropes. And if we started twisting that around itself, that starts to give us a bit of a picture of what DNA actually looks like and the shape it has itself. And again, that we see here, the nucleic acids are these colors here, the purple and yellow, the pink and the orange, and they're always connecting in the same kind of way, pink with orange and purple with yellow. I think that should sum up our goals, though. We understand what nucleic acid is composed of, so carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and then we add in that phosphorus for the DNA or the RNA. We understand now why nucleic acids are important, because those are what store all the information for our cells to be able to do pretty much anything that we need them to do. All the information in our entire cell and how it does everything it needs to do is based off the nucleic acid. And we see, therefore, the role that that macromolecule plays in the cell, being in the nucleus, sending out information to the cytoplasm to create proteins, for example. But it's definitely a huge, important thing. You might be asking yourself also, in all of our other goals, we were always looking at what foods give us these macromolecules. And nucleic acids are actually found pretty much in any living cell. So whenever we eat anything that was alive at one point, which is pretty much everything that we eat, whether it's fruits and vegetables or meat or anything that comes from plants or animals, they're all going to have some nucleic acids in their cells, in their nucleus, and therefore we don't really look at it in the same way as we do with the other ones, because that's found in everything that we eat. So the other ones were found more specifically in specific foods, but this is really found a little bit more universal. Hopefully that explains a little bit more about nucleic acids to you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this and have a wonderful day.